Good morning, Dr. Kingsley. This is Trent Reynolds in your 325 hybrid class. For my book this morning, I'm going to be reading a short story out of Winnie the Pooh Storybook collection, gauged towards second and third graders. And this is one of the stories that I read to my son, so I'm not 100% familiar with it, but we've done it a couple of times. I had another book picked out, two actually, The Giving Tree and Dinosaur Dragons Love Tacos, but I wasn't sure if those were already done in the class or not, and I figured you'd want something that somebody else hasn't read yet, so I opted with this one. So on we go. Disney's Winnie the Pooh, I'll Be Seeing You. The 100-acre wood was abuzz with more than bees. Winnie the Pooh and his friends had each received a formal invitation to Owl's house. It read, "Come for tea and announcement of great importance." "An announcement," said Pooh, who enjoyed all sorts of sweet treats. "Why, that's very kind of Owl. Do you suppose that is a very large mint? And will there be one for each of us?" Christopher Robin chuckled. "Silly old bear," he said. "I think this means that Owl has something to tell us. He's going to make an announcement." "I see," said Pooh. But he wasn't quite sure that he did. When the friends arrived, Owl went on and on about an upcoming family reunion until Rabbit stood up. "Owl," he said, "we know all about your reunion planning, every last little detail. But what did you tell us? Why are we here?" Owl stopped speaking for a moment. "Why indeed?" he mumbled. "Oh yes, I know," he said. "The reunion planning is all done. It begins tomorrow. I simply wanted to share the news with you, and that I shall be gone for 1 week." "Don't worry about us. We'll be just fine when you're gone," Rabbit answered Owl, as he and the others set about their long goodbyes. As soon as Owl shut his door, Rabbit clapped his hands together with glee. "Don't you see?" exclaimed Rabbit. "We don't have to hear any more long-winded stories about Aunt Snowy or third cousin Barney twice removed. In fact, we don't have to hear anything from Owl at all for a whole week." While Owl was away, things went on as usual in the 100-acre wood. Rabbit tended his garden, only without Owl looking over his shoulder and talking nonstop about the glorious gardens his grandmother had when he was a younger owl. Piglet painted his pictures, but he didn't have Owl peering at each canvas and remarking on each painting. Pooh still enjoyed plenty of honey, but didn't have to listen to Owl lecture him about the benefits of doing his stoutness exercises, something Owl had read about extensively. It was also quiet over at Kangaroo's house. Kango was able to bake without Owl describing what a wonderful cook his great-aunt Gladys had been. Roo and Tigger continued to play together, but without having to stop to listen to Owl explain the science behind bouncing and other important concepts. And Eeyore managed to rebuild his house again, but without Owl boasting about the grand home some of his relatives lived in. One day, after nearly a week had gone by, Rabbit was in his garden. He had begun to feel a little lonely while working in it. Just then, 2 pesky crows swooped in and began to peck at his plants. They had arrived the day that Owl had left, and now they bothered Rabbit every morning. "Shoo! Shoo!" Rabbit cried. After he managed to wave the crows off, Rabbit thought for a moment, perhaps when Owl was around, it was too noisy for the crows. "Well," Rabbit said aloud to himself, "imagine that." Kango was finding her housework was taking longer and was much more dull without Owl's company. And now that Roo and Tigger could bounce to their heart's content without Owl's lectures interrupting them, Roo realized that he got tired long before Tigger ever did. "Don't worry," said Tigger. "Bouncing is what Tiggers do best." But the friends just weren't having as much fun as before. Eeyore rebuilt his house, but he missed having Owl around. "Seems like more work without the words," he said with a sigh. The friends all gathered at Owl's house. "Has Owl been gone a week yet?" asked Pooh. "Why, it's more than that, I'm sure of it," declared Rabbit. He thought for a moment. "What if Owl decides he'd rather live with his relatives and he never comes back?" "That's impossible," said Tigger. "Isn't it?" Tigger looked around to see a bunch of uncertain, unhappy faces. Suddenly, the 100-acre wood was quieter than ever. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Owl could be annoying them at times, but having no Owl at all was completely unacceptable. Just then, Christopher Robin came down the path leading to Owl's house. He was pulling his red wagon, which was piled high with gifts, and walking beside Christopher Robin, talking up a storm, was none other than Owl himself. "We thought you might have enjoyed your reunion so much that you wouldn't come back," said Pooh. Owl shook his head. "Oh, it was a splendid reunion," he said, "but stay with my family? Never. They talk far too much. Welcome home, Owl," said Rabbit happily. "Now, tell us all about your trip." And that is the end of our Owl's story from Winnie the Pooh. If there's anything else you'd like me to add, if you have any questions, please give me a call, 402-547-7895. Thank you.